GE Fawcett Shock, and welcome to the beginning of July edition of the Shortgrass, the Kildare Nationalist Sports Podcast. I'm Pat Costello, and joining me this week, as usual, are Ger McNally, Tommy O'Connell, and Seamus Dillon. Lads, 6 months of the year have elapsed, and still the sports in the Shortgrass County have not abated. Lots to look back on, and indeed lots to look forward to. And indeed, a particular article in the Kildare Nationalist this week, written by our good colleague Richard Cummins, which we might comment on as well, or look for comments on, or whatever. Let's start with about a week ago, Ger, the Kildare LGFA under-16 team travelled down to Featherton, County Tipperary, to take on the mighty Cork, who had been under-14 champions the previous year. Came away with a great victory, and now they're in an All-Ireland final. You were there, Ger.
Yeah, absolutely, Pat. It was right slap bang in the middle of that hot spell that we were having last week. It was absolutely sweltering conditions, and although it's an absolutely fantastic facility down in Feather, the real kind of community hub, with many different things there. There was a stand in front of a full-size AstroTurf pitch, but the pitch that we were on a grass pitch, and there was no covered at all, so it was absolutely sweltering for all involved. But just an incredible performance from the Kildare girls. It was a very, very good Cork side. And even though Kildare had a flying start, they got a goal inside the opening couple of minutes, took away a penalty. But for the remainder of the first half, to run the back foot and really struggling kind of with some powerful, direct, pacey running from the Cork middle third. But they went in 5 points down at the halftime break. They were 6 points down then early in the second half, and kind of after seeing so many Kildare teams lose All-Ireland semi-finals this year, it felt like it was heading towards a familiar and all too familiar kind of finish from the game. But the Kildare girls stood up. They were absolutely brilliant. They were sensational through that third quarter. They got a goal that kind of kick-started things for them. They scored 1-4 without reply through that third quarter, and from being a stage when they were 6 points down very early in the second half, by the time they went into that badly needed water break midway through the second half, they were a point ahead. But the job wasn't done at that stage as well, because Cork came storming back into it at the end of the final quarter, and it was real nip and tuck until Kildare got a goal to go 4 clear, but then Cork got a goal right at the end as well, and Kildare had to defend one last Cork attack, but they managed to do so and got a 1 point win. But I think actually a 4 point margin at the end, had Cork not got that late goal, would have been a fairer kind of reflection of the game, and particularly the second half.
Yeah. You'd have to credit James Costello, because he had brought the team to an under-14 semi-final, I think it was. They lost. They had also lost the previous year to Mayo at under 16 level. So this was his third year in charge of probably that particular group. So, I mean, the headline in the Nationals this week: we needed to work hard or fight like dogs, and we got there in the end. Was there a rowing analogy there?
Full like dogs, yeah. Well, that quote was from that young girl that's in the picture there, Amy Wall, and you can see the kind of look of determination on her face, and that quote from her, and kind of that photo really sums up the spirit not only of herself but right throughout the team. But yeah, you have to say that the management team did a fantastic job with Kildare, and obviously that is not something that happens overnight. As you referenced, James would have had them at under 14 level a couple of years ago, and they did very well then as well, and showed a lot of promise. But to keep the foot to the pedal and then go and beat a side like Cork in an All-Ireland semi-final just says huge amount about the work that's being done with the players, but also the players themselves. I mean, we praise the management team, but it's ultimately the players who go out on the field, and they're the ones that have to take most of the credit. And James referenced after the game that they just wanted to instill a belief into Kildare that they could go on and take on Cork or anybody else who was standing in their way. They believe that they're as good as anybody out there, and even when they were 6 points down, they didn't drop their heads. They just kept going, plugging away, and managed to change momentum back in their favour, and kicked on from there.
Yeah, and Tommy and Seamus, you too would be very close to the LGFA action at underage level, and it's fair to say that a lot of players are coming through now and working on to the senior team, and you would expect to see some of those players coming forward now, the likes of Amy Wall in particular.
Take that, Tommy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the spread of clubs as well, Pat. You just see them from all over the county. It's brilliant to see. We knew about Amy a bit because of her exploits already this year at schools level, and been here. And you see that a lot in ladies football, where you hear about these girls coming through, like Aoife Murnane there coming through the last few years before she made the burst on the senior. So it's a good thing as well that they're not, these girls don't just land up the scene. People are aware of them. They're obviously getting the right development. They're in with good groups, good management, good coaching, good FLOs and all that stuff. So it is this. I obviously wasn't at it last week, but I was following it as close as I could on Kildare LGFA Twitter page. But they were on it. They were even putting the wides. They had this thing just constantly. This Twitter machine just constantly going, and it was so nerve wracking because I know we were texting as well because Jar was dad and stuff, and we were kind of going trying to keep on top of it. But God, you're thinking there aren't too many Kildare teams that go behind like that against one of the big teams. You're kind of thinking, oh God, it's not looking great. But to see the updates coming back and just score after score after score, then the goal, just brilliant, So brilliant for them and their families. I mean, how many Kildare teams have been in an All-Ireland final? It's absolutely brilliant. It's wonderful for them. But just regards that development, Pat, it's so important now because girls can play at a younger age. With the senior team that come through it, they're 18 years of age, and they're in with the seniors. Not like the men's where they need a couple of years development apparently, and you have to bring them on for a few years. They're straight in there. You can see they can play at 15. They can play senior club football at 15, so they get great experience at club level at that age group. So it's such an important age group. It really is, because they're already making the step up. This isn't the case that these girls are waiting around 4 or 5 years. They're going to be bang into the next couple of years. And these are going to be the names that we're all going to be becoming used to. So long may it last.
Yeah, absolutely. And Seamus, you will have known, 2 years ago when your own niece Ruth was involved in a semi-final against Cavan, a very powerful Cavan team, and it's Cavan that Kildare will play in the final. The only good thing is it won't be in Kingspan, Breffni, that's for sure. So we can take that one out of the equation. But like Kildare, underage ladies football is very strong in Cavan.
Yeah, I remember that evening, Pat. That was one of the best underage Cavan sides or any girl side that I've seen in many a long evening, because they were very, very good. But look, at a bit like Tommy, I haven't seen a whole lot of those girls this year, but it's in keeping with the performance, the result to be in an All-Ireland final. It's in keeping with Kildare LGFA at underage level over the last couple of years, where they have been so competitive, and it's feeding through, as we say, to the senior panel. Those 16s will become minors, and then if it's Pat Sullivan or whoever is there, or the senior panel looking at girls like that. But you have to compliment, as you said, the likes of James Costello, Kevin Jones with the minors, and those that have gone before them. There's wonderful work going on at underage level, and they're getting their rewards. Most years Kildare are knocking on the door. They're very competitive at all underage competitions, and it can only be bright for the future. And I think the most, I suppose, if you look at it in context with maybe at men's level, we're bringing through the underage, and they are making their mark at senior level. I think that's one of the most important things. But well done to them. It'd be great to get to and it's great to be in an All-Ireland final, but it would be brilliant to bring home a title. And I'm just trying to think back, did we have an All-Ireland minor final in Galway in Longford against Galway team a few years ago?
Yeah, that's right.
In Longford against Galway.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember Tommy was standing down in front of us there. They got stuck beside a TG Cahir commentator who was probably heard back in Galway Bay without a microphone. He went demented in the box. But anyway,
sure, wasn't John Von Barnett? No.
But look, it's great to see. It's great to see Kildare ladies having so much success. Well done.
Well, I just recall that the midfielder for Cavan that day that I spoke about, Ellie Brady, she's gone off now and played. She will play in Australia this year. So that just shows you the talent that was there at the time, and the talent that's coming through in Kildare. Maybe there might be a few more of them. Anyway, that final is fixed for the 15th of July. No venue as yet, Ger, but we would be betting men if we were. We'd be saying maybe Kinnegad or somewhere in Westmeath.
Yeah, possibly. I think there's been plenty of LGFA finals down through the years have been played in Kinnegad, and that's probably be relatively halfway between the two counties. I suppose you could look at that, but I would hope that it would be a pleasant night if it isn't Kinnegad, because we were talking off air there, myself and Seamus were there obviously for the under-20s game this year when It was horrendous weather altogether, and obviously there was a very unfortunate incident with TJ Nolan on the pitch. But even in the stands, it's very uncomfortable for supporters because it's a small enough stand if it's anyway inclement weather at all. But yeah, we'll wait and see. The one thing we know is that James Costello will have that team ready, and it's definitely on the Wednesday, July 15th, so a couple of weeks away. But just to mention some of the girls, because I think there's some of them that deserve a special mention, because Amy Wall there, we've talked about, and she certainly has a lot of talent and has shown that. Anna Dillon scored a couple of goals, including an early penalty, and she had a real turn of pace. Catherine Murphy scored 4 points. Yeah. She was absolutely superb, and she's a real powerhouse, and she's a kind of a nice balance in the forward line, because she's so powerful and strong and can burst through, and there's a lot of pacey players around her as well. And I don't know what's in the water out in Castledermot, Tommy, for these under-16s, because we've seen it with the lads now. And God, Grace Byrne, I thought, was absolutely superb, and particularly in the second half as well. She just drove at the Cork defence time and time again. And another player as well who we thought did really well was Doireann Lanigan. And she kind of was struggling in the first half. She's, I think, the daughter of Niall Lanigan, who would have played in goal for Stelbert Hurlers for many years. But she kind of struggled in the first half because the Cork wing forward, Nell Kinsella, was causing a lot of problems. In particular, she scored their goal in the first half. But a match doesn't always be smooth for a player, and if a player can sometimes regroup and reset and grow into the match, that's sometimes more impressive than somebody who just hits the ground running. And I thought Doireann and the whole half-back line for Kildare, Sarianne Hannick and Kate Hill as well, across that half-back line, they really shut down the problems that Cork were causing them in the first half. And for a young side to get that problem solving during the game, I thought was really impressive as well. So yeah, lots to be very positive about that side, and yeah, we really look forward to that All-Ireland final now in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, indeed. Well, it finished. Sorry, Tommy, go ahead.
I just going to ask: Is Catherine Murphy? Is she a sister of Louise Murphy's? I know Catherine plays camogie as well. She's on the under-16 camogie panel as well. I'm just, because she's from Athy and because she's a Murphy, and Louise Murphy is on the Kildare. I'm just wondering, is there a connection there? Because when you have dual players from Athy like that, it'd be more than a coincidence, but.
I don't know. I know Catherine plays a bit of rugby as well. She was involved in a very successful art school Metronode side there this year as well. So, and I think has been in with the Leinster academies and stuff like that. So, of her family links, I wouldn't be sure of.
So it's good for Cavan as well, Pat. In fairness, do you remember we were in Cavan in your neck of the woods watching Kildare play Cavan a few years ago? What was the name? Where were we? What was the grounds? Up beside your house.
Ballyhaise?
Was it? No. I don't know. There was a little
Belturbet.
That was it.
Yeah, Belturbet.
Because we went there that day when Diane was over Kildare, and Jesus, Kildare getting a woeful beating, and things weren't looking great. But see, Cavan had a good win at the weekend. They won the relegation semi-final against Laois. That was great to keep them kind of in intermediate, and then have the under-16s coming through. So for all these counties, these kind of so-called weaker teams, getting to something like this, when you see a Cavan getting in there ahead of all the other top counties.
They beat Galway. They beat Galway in the semi-final. So that's there were probably two unexpected results. I mean, people would have been saying the Cork and Galway would have been favourites for those from those two games and to reach the final, but then it ended up with Kildare and Cavan, and Kildare won on a scoreline of 214 to 310, and that final will be against Cavan on the 15th of July. We will tell you where the venue is as soon as we know. Tommy, we're moving up to the north for the weekend, perhaps because the Camogie are there. But before that, we have at 1:45 we have the Kildare senior LGFA team facing Armagh in the TG Cahir All-Ireland quarter-final. A repeat of a game last year that Kildare shocked everybody by winning, and why not this year as well, Tommy?
Yeah, that was a shock. I think Jerry, you were definitely up on it, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, fantastic.
It was like a 2-point win. Remember, Leisha got the goal.
Yeah,
that's right.
I remember I was in France. I was watching it in France in about 38-degree heat on a phone that was melting out of my hands, and I was jumping around the place like a madman. So it's great. Like, that was in the group stages, wasn't it? That was to get them into the quarterfinal.
Not the quarterfinal. Yeah.
But to see, like, Pat, you and I were definitely at, Seamus, you might be at as well, the Armagh game in the league.
Yeah, we
in
were.
Hawkfield.
Yeah. Should have won.
They lost that 13 points to 9, I think.
Yeah, 4 points.
They really didn't deserve to lose by that. A couple of different things that were a bit naive in attack, but it showed that day that, you know, the fact that they should have won it, you know, it just shows that they shouldn't have anything in their heads now about Armagh, because at the end, the one worry, I suppose, from that match would have been how easy Armagh cut them open through the middle.
Correct.
And it was something that Armagh seemed to target, wasn't it, Pat? Like
that has been the style. I've watched Armagh on 2 further occasions. I saw them against Cork, and they were lucky to be beaten that day. And then I saw them against Dublin in the final game in the league, and it ended in a draw. Two late goals by Armagh got them in for a draw. That's their modus operandi. They drive through you, they drive at you, and but then they can also mix it up by sending a long ball into the full forward line where O'Hanlon is there. So they have the experience. But, you know, Kildare are very good in defence, and they have been, and they need to shore that defence up again and take their scores, I think.
They would have learned a lot from that league game as well, and the game that was early in the league.
That's right.
But obviously, I mean, there was a couple of disappointing results, and I think they really needed that Tipperary game. And I don't mean that from an obvious point of view to get through, but they needed it to just settle themselves out, because the matches are so difficult, and they're coming at them right, left, and centre. And maybe, you know, there's been negativity probably getting into their heads, and that wasn't a bad Tipperary side either. But Kildare just were so well. Root Sargent, like, well, it was unbelievable, and just across the field they were brilliant. All the leaders on the team stood up that day, and this is where they're going to be needed again, because if Armagh, the Kelly Mallon was running riot that day, and the girl Drews, the wing back, she was the one who was powering up through the middle as well. And they're a strong team, and we saw how strong physically Kerry were. Speaking of Kerry, actually, the referee for that under-16 final is the same referee, the referee Kildare Kerry in St. Connors Park a couple weeks ago, the ladies' match. So there's just a random one. But I'm looking forward to the weekend. Like, you know, I mean, it was such a relief getting that win over Tipperary, because, you know, when you can slip into that relegation battle and stuff, but just suddenly, like, that was the biggest result of the year. Simple as that. Like, you know, to just not only get into a quarter final, but to hold on to your senior status for another year, that's huge. Look at Laois. Laois dropped out of senior 2-3 years ago, and we're already battling to stay out with junior. You know what I mean? Because that intermediate is getting really difficult now, so it's vital to stay in senior. But you know, it's going to be brilliant this weekend. Every chance in the world.
Kildare are very strong. That half-back line is immensely strong, Seamus.
Yeah, when Tommy, as Tommy was talking, I was just thinking back to that Armagh game, and the one thing that would have stood out was the ability for those Armagh girls to cut holes through the middle. But it's since then, I think Kildare have really nailed down that half-back line of Hazel, Ruth Sargent, and Leisha Lenihan. I think that's the platform that they'll be trying to build on from Sunday or Saturday afternoon to get a victory against Armagh. And I think definitely that the confidence booster that Tipperary win will have brought to them, they'll go up there with no fear, you know. And I think if they can get in front early, they'll cause problems, because you know, they have the ability. But it's just you know, if they can build on it, I think that's the important thing. There's no pressure now, because I suppose Armagh are favourites going into it. But the fact that they have, as Tommy said, you've regained or held on to your senior status, you're safe for next year, and it's definitely a great opportunity to take another step forward. Yeah,
absolutely. All the pressure will be on Armagh, Jared. They're playing at home. There will be favourites, so the pressure will be on them, and they haven't reacted well to pressure in recent games anyway.
Yeah, they kind of, I suppose, some of their star players maybe are slightly coming to the end, although Amy Mackin scored a hat-trick of goals there against Cork in the opening round of the All-Ireland series, and by all accounts they were a little bit nervy in seeing off Waterford after that big win against Cork. They beat Waterford then by a goal, but it was Waterford really pushing on in the closing stages, and I think they might have hit the bar there in the kind of last scramble as well from what I read. So yeah, look, that they would be, obviously a home advantage is definitely a big advantage when it comes to this, but I wouldn't say Kildare are pressure free, because certainly I think Pat Sullivan within that Kildare setup, he would be pushing for Kildare. They'd love to go one step further. I mean, obviously I think as Tommy and James have alluded to there, that victory over Tipperary, securing that senior status, that was probably the minimum standard that they set for themselves out of the championship, and that have matched last year's achievement of getting to an All-Ireland quarter-final. And I think last year going down to Kerry, it probably always felt that it was maybe a step too far for that side at that stage of the development. And even though they gave it a pretty good shot, you always felt that Kerry were going to win that. But this one feels a little bit different, and I think Kildare, without any pressure on their shoulders, they'll be going up on Saturday afternoon, really hopeful of getting a victory and, getting into an All-Ireland semi-final. And once you're in an All-Ireland semi-final, anything can happen from there. And the memory of that victory that we spoke about last year will give them great belief, that they really have, I would imagine, confidence that they can go to Armagh, take the game to them, and there's every reason to believe they can get a win there.
Absolutely. And Seamus, Kildare are probably settled in defence, settled in midfield, but he doesn't seem to have his I suppose, best six forwards in his head as yet, it seems, anyway.
Yeah, I suppose the most disappointing aspect of the Kerry defeat was that last third of the field, where we didn't have the girls to maybe take it on themselves, have a go, and test the Kerry defence. We were just maybe too fond of, turning back, and some girls maybe just not having the confidence to have a shot or get a shot away when you're inside the scoring arc, for want of a better area. But look, it improved significantly against Tipperary. And I suppose one girl who, and I know Tommy had spoke about it, I was looking at the chat that was going on, was Lara Curran, because as I say, I've always had great time for her as a player. She's excellent, and I think even in the Leinster final, I'm not sure whether it was a case of was she being curtailed, if for the want of a better word, but she often was turning back to give it to a shooter, maybe she wasn't one of the designated ones, but she certainly stood up in the second half. And I think when you have players like that, and that's not taken from anybody else, you need to give them the freedom. If you're inside 30 yards and you're well worth a shot of having a shot of goals, go for it, take a chance. And because those chances won't come around too often on Sunday afternoon. But I do agree, Pat, it's probably just getting it hard to tie down six forwards there. I suppose Alana Prizeman is, set in stone. One or two others who definitely be holding down. Molly Aspel there, wing forward. They would certainly be on your team sheet maybe straight away. I can't think of the girl from Kappa. She's certainly top scorer. Aoife. She's been absolutely wonderful all year for Kildare, and they'll be depending a lot on her on Sunday afternoon or Saturday afternoon. But look, at the moment it's all to play for. But if you can find a contented and a happy six and a cohesive six forwards, then to have a great chance.
Tommy, I was conducting the Joe Mallon Motors and the Naas Racecourse Kildare LGFA championship draws last week, and two of the players who were there represented their clubs were Roisin Byrne from Sarsfields and Grace Clifford from Easttown. They're as giddy as still, they're as eager as still they were 2 years ago. Considering all the retirements, etc., maybe it'd be good to have them in the forward line on Saturday.
It would. Two of Kildare's best footballers and two of the nicest girls you'll meet. But Pat, I'm not going to talk about that, to be honest, because I think it's unfair. I think the girls have stepped away, and they're doing their own thing. I mean, we see what Roisin's doing for Sarsfields. We know what Grace could do in the middle, but I just think it's unfair on this team, because I just think we fully need to focus on that young team that they have and what they're doing and what Pat Sullivan is doing with the players that he has there. Because there was something for me in Tipperary, and I didn't think it was going to happen after about 15 minutes, because I saw a lot of the previous games, a bit afraid to shoot and then a little bit of passing, but then something clicked and they started kicking, and Lara Curran got a point and Ruth got the first of her 3 or 4 points that she got, and then suddenly then Aoife Ratkin is whipping them over like we know she can. And I think that's the kind of thing. And they were missing Aoife Murnane as well. I don't know if that knee injury is coming back to Huxter.
Should Aoife Ratkin be attempting 2 pointers? I think she has the ability. Yeah, I think she has the range.
She's lined up a couple. And at the last second, then she just kind of thought. Now it all depends, obviously, if there's a bit of wind. I think she can do it without the wind.
Yeah.
It's funny in ladies football as well, because they find themselves in men's football, we always talk about this invisible barrier on the 40-meter arc that seems to, draw defenders out and draw forward toward, and then you stop. In ladies football, it's actually slightly inside the arc, unless you're Galway. Galway are the one team, ladies team, that start with Laurie, like always attempting 2-pointers. I'd like to see, because she gets them so much ball, and as you know, Pat, she has that quick step, and she shoot on sight. So if it comes down to it and they need it, it's something that you would hope they have practiced how to build up and how to get Aoife out onto that arc, to look for that loop ball around and just give it a go. I mean, there's like the players that they've put in the forward line now, and I'm talking about, Molly Aspel's contribution at the moment, because I know she can get a score, but like, she's such a brilliant worker and such a brilliant footballer, carrier of the ball. But then Jessica Harney as well, her role now is a tracking role, and to make sure there's none of that crap going through the middle like we've seen in the past, because she's a serious athlete, is Jessica, unbelievable athlete. And Pat kind of has molded a few of these girls into those positions. Like Molly Aspel, I was watching her the last day running with the ball. She's so confident, running with at speed, solo, and looking for that pass. I think they've a really good chance, Pat, right, at the weekend. But like, some of the games I saw this year, bar that Kerry game in Connah's Park, you can forget about that. If they can get a win over Armagh and get a confidence booster in performance, like, they could really kind of push. I know it could be Dublin or Kerry kind of after that, but like, it's amazing what confidence can do when the players are there.
Well, there's a leveling off. There is a fair leveling off. Having watched some of the league matches this year, and my other role, there is a fair leveling off, and the gaps are not as wide as you might have expected previously. Certainly, Kerry are very, very strong. Dublin play hot and cold. Galway, I'm very impressed with this year. Cork, I think Cork are gone now, are they? I don't think they reached the.
They were in our mass group.
I think they're gone. But Jared, there's also a couple of pacey forwards and score forwards who can score, like the likes of Abby Cahill from Easttown and Ruth Dillon as well. He can use them if necessary.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was good to get 5 subs in off the bench there against Tipperary the last day as well. So it was game time getting into some of those girls as well. But like Tommy speaking there, like Pat Sullivan definitely has a type of a player there. Molly Aspel, Jessica Harney, Leisha Lenihan obviously will be in the team. Probably the first name on the team sheet, Ruth Sargent. Like, these players are all really athletic players and very much suiting the new speeded up version of the game as well. And probably no surprise that Kildare are playing some of their best football now with the kind of firmer ground as well. And I think that all plays into them. And like, going back to that game against Armagh last year, it was very much like that as well. It was a lot of attacking from deep that Kildare did, and it was no surprise that it was Leisha Lenihan that got the crucial goal in that game as well in the second half. So, you wouldn't be surprised to see the likes of a Ruth Sargent or a Leisha Lenihan pop up. And I think, Pat, again, going back to that game in Mangard Park, wasn't it Ruth Sargent that had probably the best goal chance of the lot for Kildare? Than how that shot stayed out that day, and it could have swung the game in a different direction altogether. So, I think around that middle third, and Hazel McLaughlin is another player as well who she's probably gone back into the fullback line, I think, over the last couple of games, and maybe allowed Ruth Sargent a little bit more freedom. But she's very much of that ilk as well, and she can go out and push around the field. And Lara Curran as well, maybe starting off further forward, but can drop out into that middle third as well. So, there's a real kind of athleticism about that Kildare side, and they certainly won't be found wanting for fitness or pace or mobility around that middle third. And I think that's the real strength of this Kildare side. And they do need forwards to score. That is the one thing. Aoife Flanagan has done a good job of holding kind of or carrying that attack. Alana Pridesman maybe hasn't found the scores as easy to come by this year as she did in their debut season last year, and that's why it was great to see Lara Curran knocking over 3 points against Tipperary. But there's so many players around the team who can contribute. So although Kildare won't be focusing on one player to get their scores, they will need the likes of Leisha Lenihan, Molly Aspel, who certainly chipped in with some fantastic scores, Ruth Sargent. These players are going to have to come forward and get the scores for Kildare, because it's very much a team game when it comes to the scores for Kildare, and they look for scores from all over the field.
Well, that match takes place this Saturday in Box IT Athletic Grounds in Armagh. It's Armagh versus Kildare in the TG Cahir LGFA All-Ireland quarter-final, and we look forward to that. There will be updates on KFM And Jared, I think you're covering it for KFM, are you, or is it Seamus?
Yes, we're up there for KFM as well as the Nationalist.
Yeah. So as an asset, Seamus, you'll probably be there as well, I guess.
No, I'm going to the more salubrious surroundings of St. Conleth's for a Division 4 and 3 league finals.
No better man, indeed, no better man. And Tommy, will you take up your position on the terrace in Armagh?
I think the last time I was in Armagh at that league game with Kildare senior men's, I don't know if I'll be welcome back. I got fairly hairy that day. I'm hoping to go. I am hoping to go Saturday. I'm not entirely sure if I can yet, but I am hoping to go.
We wish Pat Sullivan and Leisha Lennon and all the crew the very, very best of luck, and we'll be rooting for them all the way. A good result last weekend for the Camogie team, and fair play to Rob O'Neill. He kept plugging away, and finally they were rewarded with a big victory over Wicklow in the league, and in the championship, in the All-Ireland Premier Junior Championship. Now you see it there. They won on a scoreline of 6-21 to goal and 5 for Wicklow. That took place last Saturday at 3:30 in Cedars in Collis Park. A big one now to come this weekend, but let's look at that big score there. 6-21, Ger. Big performance from Kildare. Took them a while to get into it. It's slow enough in the first half.
Yeah, but I think they were always on top there. You know, they were always in charge, and they were led by 1-11 to 3 points at halftime. And Rebecca McDermott had got the opening goal in the first half, and she had an outstanding performance throughout the game and ended up with a hat-trick of goals. But Roisin Ford as well is a big presence in that team, and she was among the goals as well. So it was a badly needed victory. Obviously, Wicklow are something of the whipping boys in that group. So I suppose it would have been an expected victory. A team that Kildare beat in the league as well. So it was a very good victory, but it's really set up now going into the final round against Tyrone with a do or die game for a place in the semi-finals.
Yeah, and Tommy, the last time these two sides met, Kildare had a very good victory over Tyrone.
Yeah, they did. It was a good Tyrone team as well. I can't remember any names from the Tyrone team, but I remember they had a couple of forwards that were seriously good. I think Kildare racked up a lot of scores that day. What did we say? It was 19 points to 114, I think, or something like that. Yeah. But they were really good again. Rebecca McDermott was really good that day. But Tyrone showed that day that they definitely have one or two players in that forward line that can put Kildare under pressure, physical as well. But I think for Kildare, I don't think this. I think this championship is far from over. To be honest with you, Kildare getting a couple of girls back. Like you see Rebecca McDermott scoring. Yeah. Was it 3-7, 3-8?
Yeah.
Like at the weekend,
3-7, yeah.
She was missing for the Cavan game, and I'm pretty sure she was missing for the Roscommon game as well. Definitely missing for the Cavan game because she was doing her leaving cert.
Yeah, a number of players were missing through injury and exams.
I mean, she is absolutely fantastic. She's one of Kildare's most important players at the moment. She's crucial to this team. So suddenly she's back now. They lost by 4 points to a Cavan team that are whipping everybody. Yeah. And there's a good chance they will play Cavan if they draw or win at the weekend. It'll be Cavan in the semi-final. Yeah. But they shouldn't have any fear, and if they can just go up there and get a really good result in Tyrone, and then if they could, if they have Cavan's number, they won't fear Armagh or Roscommon in whoever they play. So it all looked very grim a couple of weeks ago. Now we had a fair idea that they would beat Wicklow, but the most important thing was that Tyrone didn't get the win last week. That would have knocked Kildare out. That was vital. But the fact that they're still there, I don't know. I wouldn't rule this championship out just yet if everything's clicking.
No, and Roisin Ford is a huge asset there. Obviously, she's a dual player, but she's concentrating now, Seamus, on Camogie, and seems to be recovered from all of the injuries. And she's had a lot of setbacks over the last number of years, but she is a powerhouse.
Yeah, I was just looking at the report earlier in the today, and when you look at the likes of Rebecca McDermott, Aoife McDermott, and Roisin Ford, I think they contributed 4-16 between the three of them. And I think that tells its own story. And I saw the league match with Kildare and Wicklow back earlier in the year, and the result was no different. Kildare won comfortably. But a bit like the ladies footballers, what that victory will have done, like I think when you hit 5-6-21 is a fair score to hit. in any game, and they'll travel up at the weekend really confident now. And when you have potency in that forward line for the likes of the three girls that I've just mentioned, and you have a few others back on the panel, as the manager said after the game last weekend, he was pretty adamant that championship is only starting and that they still have a part to play, and he was pretty confident. And I think it's encouraging because they suffered a few tough defeats early on to Roscommon and to Armagh, but if you're going to turn around after getting a result against Tyrone to play Cavan again, I think it could be an opportunity to get maybe into a semi-final or a final for the Kildare girls, and that'll be no more than they deserve, because there's a lot of work going on in the background. You have to give them credit for that. It's but as I said, those three, not picking out any three in particular, but you get three girls that hits 416. That's a fair achievement on any given day, no matter at what level you're playing at. So we wish them well at the weekend, and you hope that they can get the result that's needed.
I haven't seen them play this year, but I saw them quite often last year. And two players who impressed me, Ger, were Niamh Cran from Maynooth and Sarah Carroll from Naas. And they're kind of running at defences. It's very hard to stop them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they're all, those Naas girls as well. We spoke about them in particular, but it's not just those Naas girls as well, because like Niamh Cran and Niamh Mortal as well is another player who's chipped in with some good scores, and Cuivin Birchall as well from Johnstown Bridge is another very important player in that forward line. Aoife Steins is another one of the Naas contingent as well, who got 1-3 at the weekend. So, like, Kildare do have players there, and they have been, I suppose, a little bit unlucky. Probably, to be fair, I didn't actually realize how young some of those players were until you start hearing about the missing games for their leaving cert as well, which is on one hand, a credit to them that they don't stand out when you see them as being so young, but it just shows how young they really are. So it's a tough season for Kildare, but to be going in now with a chance, and I suppose starting out at the start of the championship, Rob O'Neill, that's all he would have wanted, to have something riding on that last game going to Tyrone, and knowing that if they can win, it's in their own hands, and coming into form at the right time. That was the ideal game going into that match now. Last weekend against Wicklow, the girls will be flying. Exams over, they're near full strength, and they have every opportunity there.
Yeah, and just mentioning Rob O'Neill, obviously he would know these quite a number of these players quite well, Tommy, because he brought them to an All-Ireland minor B title there, just 2024 was it? Or was it 2023? Recent times anyway, and some of them now are backboning this senior team.
Yeah, it is. It's great to see. I mean, that's what youth is about, and it's the same with ladies footballers as well. You see the young players coming through, but when you see these young camogie players coming through, and they're fearless as well. Like, I know I keep rabbiting on about Rebecca McDermott, but she's light enough for her age, but she absolutely wellies into everything. I mean, you have the physicality of Aoife McDermott and Roisin Ford, and I mean, those two girls, I mean, she's holding like a shoulder off them. They're extremely well conditioned as well. You have that physicality in there, and they're really good. Like, they're good role models as well for these young girls that are coming through, because they can see, where they can get to as regards that conditioning level, because you have the skill set that's going to improve, and that's going to come from good coaching as well, and playing matches like this and trying to get into knockout stages. But when you have girls around you on the field, you mentioned Cuivin Birchall as well. Like, I mean, players like that have been around for a few years, that have that inter-county conditioning and experience. It's so good for these young players, and it's only going to be good for the future of camogie in Kildare.
Yeah, and Roisin Roach is a very strong goalkeeper as well, very impressive as well. I spoke to her at the launch of the championships earlier this year, so she's very, very strong, very articulate, and knows what her game is about. So very, very best of luck to Rob O'Neill and all of the camogie team as they face Tyrone in what's the name of it? It's Owen Rua Hurling Club in Dungannon at 3:30 p.m. on this Saturday. And Seamus, there will be updates on KFM.
Yes, yeah. Daniel Maher is travelling up that far for KFM to bring the updates for it. Yeah, and that Owen Rua Club, I was in it last 2 years ago. I think Kildare hurlers played Tyrone. Fabulous ground that they have up there, as big a pitch as you'd find, but it's good. It's a good spot.
Yeah, there you go. Well, very best of luck to Rob O'Neill and the Kildare camogie team in that game. It's the last game in the group stages of the All-Ireland Premier Junior Championship. The Timplex sponsored All-Ireland Premier Junior Camogie Championship. And after that, it will be into a semi-final. Cavan, Roscommon, Armagh and Kildare are in pole position at the moment. So win or a draw for Kildare at the weekend, and that would leave them into a semi-final position. So they're very best up to them. Let's turn our attention then to domestic matters here in Kildare, and it's the semi-finals of the Hanlon Concrete Limited League, Division 1 League. There we see it. That's the Football League. Selbridge, Naas, Raheens and Moorfield are in the semi-final. Naas and Raheens play on Saturday night, neighbours' children, you might say, particularly from the Naas CBS days, but it should be a cracker.
Yeah, that's Friday evening, isn't it?
Friday evening, Friday evening at 8 o'clock, in Vanguard 1.
Yeah, so I suppose no surprise to see Naas there, obviously, perennial challengers, and even without their county players, through the league season, they have so many players and such strength and depth that they can still, rack up some big victories along the way as well. So, absolutely no surprise for them. But, I'm really looking forward to seeing Raheens, well seen in this year. Obviously, Anthony Rainbow has a bit of a tune out of them so far. And a lot of talent to deal with in that Raheens club, and as you mentioned, Pat, a huge amount of them would have came through that Naas CBS academy in the school as well. So there would be plenty of crossovers between the two sides in terms of being teammates in their school days. So Raheens obviously won a minor title as well, I think recently as well in the last couple of years too. So they have a lot of talent in there, and Anthony Rainbow in some ways is probably a lucky man to be going into a club with such young talent just waiting to be molded. But at the same time, obviously, it takes a good manager to do that. So Anthony is doing very well at the moment, and they wouldn't they fancy their chances of maybe getting an upset. They won a Division 1 title, I think, a couple of years ago as well. So
that's right.
There's a huge amount of talent in that Raheens club. So it's just a matter of harnessing it. And they maybe will be a dark horse, probably not that dark a horse at this stage as well, because I think everybody knows what a good team they are, but they'll definitely be one to watch out for in the senior championship, no matter what way that semi-final plays out on Friday.
Yeah, we know what Naas can do and generally do, but last year was a challenging year, Tommy, for Raheens. Remember, in the championship they played Naas. Was it a quarterfinal stage or a preliminary quarterfinal? And Naas gave them a very, very tough beating on that evening. But I have to say, I have been impressed by Raheens. I saw them particularly against Larry's, and they were very, very impressive that evening. So the 2026 has been good for Raheens.
Yeah, and I've been saying it the last couple of years in those kind of prediction things where I'm just, that these young lads, they impressively won that minor A championship there about 4 years ago, I think, at this stage. But, you're waiting for these lads to come through, and you kind of forget how young they are. People kind of expected maybe some immediate improvement from the Raheens senior point of view with all those names coming through. But it's definitely worth keeping an eye on this year, because as you said, Anthony Rainbow's gone in now at the right time, and these lads are all 23 years of age. I think like Fionn Cook and a few of those lads. Then you have lads like Paddy Woodgate in there. Paddy on form, we all know what he can do, what he's done for the county as well. And you imagine he'll more than pull strings. In there, Niall Dolan, in with the senior panel for the last couple of years. Niall's physique has changed hugely in the last couple of years. Like, he's an absolute tank. When he was playing with the under-20s, when he was captain of them, he was he was such a skillful footballer, and he was slight, but you could see he was getting stronger and stronger. So he's going to be definitely one to watch out for this year. And I think he might have a little bit of a point to prove as well, because he tried to break onto that Kildare starting 15 or to try to get a bit more of a shot, and he didn't. So another one to keep an eye out for this year. Yeah.
What I noticed about him in the game against Larry's, Tommy, was he played more of a playmaker role rather than his usual forward role. He was out, particularly in the second half. He was out in midfield, and he was the one who was doing the probing and sending in the passes for the scorers.
I think that's going to be his best position going forward. Maybe even the likes of a centre half forward, because again, I'm going back to his physique and his size. And we already know the skill set that he has. He's no longer going to be your forward inside that's getting on. Just remember the score he hit in the All-Ireland semi-final from the sideline against Down. I mean, he can absolutely kick points from everywhere. But I think you're 100%. He's actually on the graphic there. I can see him looking at me. But like he can see that's exactly what his role this year. And I don't think there's going to be any pressure on them, but it is going to be really interesting to see how they go. Because eyes will be elsewhere when it comes to you're talking with your top 4 in Kildare. Maybe Raheen's could be the one to shake it up a little bit this year.
Yeah. A winner, Ger?
It's hard to go against Naas, if you're a betting man, you wouldn't be taking on Naas, I don't think, all too readily, especially with, I suppose, the county players coming back into the setup. But at the same time, I wouldn't be overly surprised if Raheen, certainly at this stage of the season, were to get a win over Naas. And Raheen's, as I said, are going very nicely indeed. And one thing about any side under Anthony Rainbow is that they would be supremely fit, and I'm sure they've seen every area of the Curragh over the last kind of number of months as well, and obviously that is paying off in results as well. So yeah, Naas obviously favourites, but it should be a good out game.
And certainly should. And the other semi-final then is on Saturday evening at 6 o'clock in Manguard 1 as well. That's Selbridge against Moorfield. And Seamus, after the disappointment in their final outing in the championship last year, Selbridge back there on top of the division, and they're in a semi-final, and they're playing Moorfield, who I presume they could say they could count themselves as being unlucky in the championship last year.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the makings of a good game. I mean, Selbridge only lost 2 games towards the back end of the league campaign. They've really been impressive, and I suppose we've discussed that or mentioned that before on air and off air in relation to having a lot of their county players back on the panel this year, and the added bonus of having close enough to a full team in all those league matches has made a massive difference to them. I did see it. I think I mentioned it to Ger earlier in the day. Kevin Flynn is playing his trade across the water in the States at the moment, but they'll be hoping to have him back for the championship. But they've been impressive enough. The Moorfields League campaign has been a little bit mixed. I did see them against St. Lawrence's recently, and Lawrence's were worthy winners that particular evening, but hard to beat Lawrence's down in Old Grange. But set up for a good one if you're going back. As you said, talking about championship, Selbridge have been knocking on the door for the last number of years, we all well know, and Moorfield have been one of the mainstays in Kildare Senior Football Championship, but rebuilding again under Frankie Hannafy. But it's the makings of a decent game, but Selbridge have showed all the form this year.
Yeah, indeed. Would you call that one, Ger?
A bit tighter, I think, as well. But Selbridge, again, they certainly have the form, and I suppose it's a bit baffling, really, that they don't have a single senior county player. Obviously, some of their old war horses' time at the very top level, the likes of Fergal Conway and Mick O'Grady, has come to an end. But yeah, for a side of their quality, it is a bit of a surprise, maybe, that they haven't had anybody on that senior setup. But it's probably been to their club's benefit in terms of being very consistent through the league season. And they've had a very interesting midfielder as well, who I haven't actually seen play, but heard couple of good reports about him, and he has a very good CV in terms of soccer across the water, and that's Keane Bulger, who's a 6'4" midfielder, and I think he's maybe getting on a little bit now, maybe 33, 34, but he had a long career in the lower leagues over in England, and also played up the north as well, I think with Larne most recently, but was an underage Selbridge JA player, and is now back in the fold. And any club that can field a 6'4" midfielder with a bit of mobility around the field as well is going to stand out in the Kildare Championship. So yeah, he's definitely a good addition for them this season as well.
Get his address. Tommy, my information is that Friday night match is at 8 o'clock in Manguard. You have it down at 7:45. Is there an update on that?
Well, I think it was 7:45 when I checked it there earlier. Could be wrong. Considering I have a typo on the graphic anyway, there's a good chance. Well, it's on the Kildare website. Friday, 3rd of July, 7:45.
Oh, is it? Okay, because the fixture list I saw had it on at 8 o'clock on Friday evening. But get there for about 7:30, and you'll be there in time anyway, no matter what happens. So those 2 games are on this weekend. That's the Senior Football League, Hand and Concrete Limited Senior Football League, Kildare Senior Football League semi-final, Division 1, Naas versus Raheen's on Friday night in Manguard Park 1, either at 7:45 or 8 o'clock, but get there for 7:30. And then on Saturday at 6 o'clock, it's Selbridge versus Moorfield. So 2 interesting games. And the final, I think, is on the 18th of July, if my memory sounds right, 17, right? Sometime around then, anyway. Seamus, you have two big games to cover at the weekend: the Division 3 and the Division 4 finals. The Division 4 final is it's in Seedwell St. Conleth's Park at 4:00. Kilcock versus Nurney. That will be an interesting one. That's the Division 4 final, Seamus.
Yeah, two really good campaigns for both sides, and I suppose.
Sorry, Division 3 final we're looking at. Division 3 final.
Yeah, Division 3 final. Yeah, when you look at, I suppose Kilcock have always been the standout team in Division 3 from the start of the league. 10 wins out of 11, which tells its own story. They were very strong and probably too strong for that Division 3 campaign. But look at all. Kudos goes to Nurney for their performance this year, to pick up 7 wins and get promoted up to Division 2 for next year. And I spoke to Alan Jordan there, who's the manager, former Kill manager, who's over Nurney this year, and he just talking about the response that he got from the players, and just outstanding. And that proves its own story. Some of us might have thought of Nurney as maybe one of the whipping boys for the intermediate championship, and I'd be in no great position myself to be talking about whipping boys in the intermediate championship, because our own Suncroft lads are still down in Division 4 for another year. But in saying that, Nurney have showed great form this year, and when you look at the likes of Ballatee, Clougharinka, and Straffan just underneath them, it's been a great year for them. And it's the makings of a good final. Nurney will go there confident, but Kilcock will be favourites to come out of that.
Yeah, would you see any chance for Nurney, Tommy? They've done remarkably well to get to the final, and as Seamus says, 7 wins and a draw.
Yeah, and as I said, good manager, and Alan Jordan as well. I mean, did a great job at Kill. He was very unlucky over the years not to get them out of junior. So they got a good one there. Not that they had a bad one beforehand, in fairness, though. And was it one of them? Noel Mackey, was it, or
Barry
Mackey?
Yeah.
That Barry Mackey in there. I mean, Barry be no shrink of violet. But I tell you, Nurney, when it comes down to this, I'll get to Kilcock in a second. But when it comes down to this intermediate championship, Nurney won't be simple. I guarantee anybody that faces off against them, they're going really well. We've seen in the past teams that have a good Division 3. Division 3 is a tough division. I mean, you look down through that. That's a serious mix of. You have two senior teams in it. With 2 senior teams, but the rest of them are good intermediate teams, junior teams that'll be challenging for the junior championship. And Nurney just put in some big performances. And I'll be keeping a really close eye on them come championship, because they're kind of a club there now, and the confidence up and they click, and there are a couple of good young players there as well. With Kilcock will be favourites. I was really impressed with Kilcock when I saw them playing against Kilcullen recently. Really impressed with them. Mark Gibbons there, and Finn Dowling, the under 20, had him as at wing back, and great athlete as well. But they just really have some, and obviously they'll have Brendan Gibbons coming back in, Shane Farrell coming in. They have a really good mix, and they should be favourites for this. I'm trying to think, did Nurney, who bet them? Was it Nurney that once beat them? I can't remember. But they will be favourites. But come championship, these are 2 teams now, but in their respective championships that I'll definitely be keeping an eye on. I think Kilcock would have been a lot of people's probably favourites, because the senior division, Confear gone down. Salins are coming up, and Salins will be regarded as quite strong. Coming after intermediate exploits last year. I forget about the league with Salins. I saw Salins playing a couple of times this year. Very unlucky to lose some of the matches. The same as Milltown are very unlucky to go down.
Yeah.
But these are 2 teams now that will relish this match, because this isn't like it's a league final and all that, but this is one of these big clashes before the championship starts in another 6 or 7 weeks. You can play all the friendlies you like, but no better way to prepare for championship than league final.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's been a while since Kilcock have hit the headlines. It's probably been disappointing for them, Ger, over the last number of years, particularly in the championship.
Yeah, like on any senior side, senior championship side, no more than Clougharinka there in Division 3. They certainly don't want to be down in Division 3. It's very hard to compete at senior level for some of these lower clubs, or in the lower reaches, and certainly they need to be in Division 2. You'd say at least to be kind of holding their own in the senior championship. So Kilcock very much ensure it was on their list to get back into Division 2 this season. So to have that ticked off in very, very good style, it's a big thing for them. And I think I said before that Norney are one of the stories that Kildare GA this year. That it's fantastic. And suppose some of the smaller clubs who maybe don't have the resources elsewhere, it can be very like a roller coaster, really ups and downs year from year, depending on who's available and different things like that. But for Norney to secure promotion ahead of the likes of Ballytea, Clogherinco, we said there, is very good. But a little subplot maybe in the game as well will be Shane Farrell against Cathal Hackney. To Kildare County players who have endured a horrendous time of injury, and that's a point that I want to come back to later on in the podcast when we're talking with the senior team in terms of injuries. But it's great that Shane and Cathal have been able to go through some really dark times in terms of injuries and been able to get back to full fitness. Obviously Shane started against Kerry the last time in Kildare's last game of the season. Cathal Hackney was an unused substitute, but back in the matchday squad as well. So I'm sure hopefully both will play some part in that final at least, and could even go up against each other in the centre of the field. But that's just one little subplot to look out for in that game.
Absolutely. With that game, it's the Annan Concrete Kildare Senior Football League Division 3 final. That one is at 4 o'clock in Cedar St. Conleth's Park. Kilcock versus Norney. Seamus will be covering that. Seamus, you'll also be covering the Division 3 final, the Division 4 final, which takes place at 2:15, also in Cedar St. Conleth's Park. That's Ballymore Eustace versus Monasterevin, two of the powerhouses in championship of the last number of years. Well, previous number of years, but maybe not the powerhouse they used to be. Strange to see them operating now in Division 4.
Yeah, look at over the course of that Division 4 campaign, and when the split came, they were both worthy of making that league final position. Monasterevin beat Kildangan in the last round of it. They were still they needed the win. They were still under pressure to get over the line because they weren't sure what was going to happen up in Ballymore. Suncroft travelled up there knowing that either of them getting a win and possibly even a draw might have been enough. But Ballymore were on the even, were the better team. Suncroft had a last-minute goal disallowed that may or may not have made a difference in the end. But saying that, it's the two best teams probably there on form, and it'll make it for a decent final. Ballymore seem to be really well organised this year, and a few lads back, and the likes of Shane Barrett now operating at centre half forward. And look at when you have Simon Murphy and Niall Murphy in your full forward line heading into the championship. You're talking about three really, really good players, three good forwards, and then Shane Barrett in the middle of the field, really looking well and looking fit. And so they're going to be formidable in the championship. But it'll be a big game on Saturday afternoon in Conleth for both themselves and Monasterevin. Monasterevin have mixed the good and the bad over the last couple of years, couple of times just battling relegation there, and had to depend on a couple of last round wins to hold on to their status. So it's the makings of a decent game on Saturday afternoon. But who'll win it? It's a tough one to call. But what I've seen to date, maybe Ballymore might be the favourites.
Yeah, wouldn't be the first time. And Ger, an interesting one. Former Monasterevin manager Conor Mortimer now going to play for our Clock in the championship this year. That'll be an interesting one.
It'll be a very interesting one, if it comes to pass. Certainly it was a transfer that raised eyebrows around the county. It'll be very interesting to see if Conor does get the boots on and tug out for our Clock in the championship. But it will certainly add to a bit of the intrigue, and I suppose our Clock can do it all the bodies they can get. So you have to withdraw from the league campaign as well. So we're very hopeful to see them with the championship and compete and complete and the championship, even if that is obviously probably the junior A is probably more of what they'd be looking at. But it will be definitely very interesting to see Conor Mortimer, who of course had a spell in Kildare football as manager at Monasterevin. I think he live in the county as well, and he involved up the north of the county when up there in one of the hotels. So he's obviously he's a fantastic footballer in his prime, and they say you never lose it. Maybe the pace goes away from you a little bit, but the touch doesn't leave you. So it might draw a few spectators to our Clock's championship game if he does pull on the boots, all right.
I think all four of us have lost a touch now as players.
Some of us never had it. Yeah. Conor Mortimer had a touch tonight. Well, maybe Seamus had the touch back in the day as well. But
yeah.
I'm actually in the Glenroyal tomorrow, Pat, so I'm hoping to bump into him or make it my business to have a chat with him.
Have a chat. Oh, yeah. Well, we're speaking of our clock. Let's send our condolences to Tony and Robbie Spain on the death of their mother very last week. Aryesh Jacob, Anam, two great hurlers, and listen to what Tony had to say during the eulogy. His mum was a great woman, and the dad died a few years ago. But three of them, the two brothers and the dad, they were called the little piglets, or the mam's little piglets. She looked after them so well indeed. So our condolences indeed to Robbie and Tony. Tommy, the Shield final is on Thursday evening. That's Ballykelly versus Castle Mitchell, nearly perennial Shield finalists south of the border, I suppose you might say, final, and certainly one to look forward to.
Yeah, it is. It's something. Castle Mitchell would be very disappointed in their year last year. I think didn't they go out on penalties to at Garvin?
That's right.
I was at that match that night. We were desperately unlucky because
was it 11-10 in the end, or 10-9 or something?
I remember I couldn't wait to get home. I was frozen to death, and it kept going on and on. But Castle Mitchell have some really, really good players, and they're good young players coming through as well. Pat, you would have seen a few of them playing for Ars Culture, and obviously they'll have the Harrises as well. But they will be disappointed last year. They'll be disappointed in that league campaign as well. You know, Kildangan were the ones that kind of stood up because it was difficult Division 4 this year, obviously, with Monasterevin and Suncroft and Ballymore, always going to be challenging up the top. So you're looking, Castle Mitchell, I thought would have been a bit more in the mix than they were. So they'll be disappointed in that. Ballykelly, the one thing I say about Ballykelly every year is that they have serious numbers. You always notice at Ballykelly. I remember going to a match last year and they had about 15 subs. You know, and you see sometimes these junior teams can be struggling for numbers and teams. And a lot of the players of Ballykelly over the last couple of years have been very young. So you're hoping a lot of those younger players, you know, will start to mature a little bit. Now, obviously, maybe this wouldn't be the year for them. But, you know, I mean, I know they struggled a couple of weeks ago to beat Ribbon. So maybe the signs aren't great from that point of view. But I just something about Ballykelly, I think, and it was the same for Kildangan. You know, when they came back into the junior grade after being away and even when they're in the reserve championship, they were really young, really, really young. But everybody in Kildangan was telling me just have patience with this lot because they will come in the next couple of years. And the Kildangan a decent year last year as well on the first year back, putting some good performances and to finish in that top section, you know. So maybe Ballykelly could look at them and think that's where we can get, you know, in a couple of years. So it could be a good one there on Thursday night in Mangare Park.
That's the Shield final, the Division 4 Shield final, Ballykelly versus Castle Mitchell in Mangard Park at 7:45 on this Thursday night. There's a full round of fixtures in the Division 2, so no semi-final as yet, even though Leixlip and Allenwood have qualified and cannot be stopped. But there you see Castle Dermot versus Easttown, Grange versus Round Towers, Confey versus Carbery, 2 Mile House versus Allenwood, Leixlip versus Rathangan, Ellistown versus Cara. Some of those are Friday night. That last one is on Wednesday. It was on Wednesday night, and it was a win for Cara.
Cara won by a point,
by a point, 2-9 to 14 points. So Cara doing the business still, so that leaves them in 5th place. Ellistown finished in 7th place. Yeah. So, but Leixlip and Allenwood, they will play in the final of the Division 2 Hand and Concrete Kildare Senior Football League Division 2. As I said, that one, Tommy, you tell me, is going to be on the 18th of July as well.
Yeah, that's when it's penciled in for that. So,
Ger, who would you say might be disappointed in Division 2?
Well, whoever loses that game on Friday evening in Castle Dermot will be the most disappointed. Maybe starting with our good friend Tommy there. That is a huge game on Friday evening. Castle Dermot against Easttown. Easttown have the advantage, I suppose, of knowing a draw will do them. Castle Dermot have to go and win the match, but you know, one of those two sides will be relegated, and whoever loses that match will be bitterly disappointed. a lot of the grounds around the county, I can't imagine too many more that I would not like to be going into for a relegation decider than going down to Castledermot, because that is a tough place to go at the best of times. Castledermot fighting for the lives. That's going to be a tough one. But Easttown, obviously, they've been boasted, I would imagine, by the return of the Borns. They had a fabulous victory, very comprehensive victory last time out, wasn't it, against 2 Mile House, was it? A big win. So they're
Rathangan, I think, was it?
Rathangan, sorry, yeah. So yeah, obviously a promotion chase in Rathangan as well. So they certainly are stronger, I would imagine, than probably at any stage through the league campaign. So it'll be a tough test for Castledermot, but equally so for Easttown going down to Castledermot. That could be a right out game. That'll be a proper championship field with it and everything else, and in Castledermot's home pitch. I'm sure Tommy will have to welcome Matt out there for all the Easttown supporters coming down.
Seamus, you better go and cover that one too.
Ger was talking about not for the faint-hearted. It's probably not even for a reporter either. But look at it. It has the makings of a great game, and it'll be disappointing for whichever of them take the drop down into Division 3, because Castledermot maybe battled hard last year as well, and Easttown, so it'll be disappointing for either of them. But it's set up for it'll be a titanic battle. So expect the unexpected, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Hell's Kitchen, Pat.
Hell's Kitchen, Hell's Fire.
As Ger said, this is exactly where Castledermot want to be. Drag these Easttown lads down to Castledermot. The sidelines will be full. The crowd will be on top of them. I must check who's refereeing it, actually.
No referee is required.
Castledermot have a few injuries. A few of their young players. Garrod Proctor, who was.
Here we go. Here's the.
The excuses are coming in already.
Garrod has been on the Kildare panels, minors, and was on the under 20. He was on the under 20 extended panel this year, I think. Or was that the minors?
Donica.
But Garrod Proctor.
Oh.
He snapped his Achilles last week. He was starting for the senior team. Wonderful young player. So that he's lost. There's a couple. I think they have 3 or 4 injuries. So there's your excuses there now.
It'll be wet and windy and dark as well.
We spoke about Castledermot before. I mean, they obviously have some real young talent coming through there. So, I mean, they definitely wouldn't want to go down to Division 3 and possibly be stuck down to Division 3. There's no guarantee of getting out of there, before those young players come through. And equally so, Easttown, obviously, as a senior club, they certainly don't want to get on to Division 3 either. So, that is definitely going to be, I think, the match of the weekend, even ahead of some of the other games that we spoke about earlier.
Yeah, I spoke about how difficult Division 3 is, like only 5 or 6 minutes ago. How difficult it is to get out of. So it's a massive thing to try not drop down to Division 3. There's Division 1 semi-final on Friday night, but there is only one place I'll be. Fergal Barry is refereeing it.
Fergal. Yeah.
Best luck, Fergal.
Emily Rand, come on, Fergal. Yeah, and I presume, Seamus, neither Alan Wood or Leitrim will want to lose their record of 8 wins and a draw and only 1 loss each. They're on 17 points each, with the better Leitrim with the better score points difference. So they won't want to lose anything.
No, they won't want to, and maybe lay down a marker, Pat, before they play the final in a couple of weeks' time. So without a doubt, it'll be. Has the makings of a decent game between the both of them, but both of them have showed great form. But as you look at that Division 2 table, you'll have to give great kudos and compliment to Grange Nolvan, who only came up last year. And you think of that draw that they got up in Leixlip earlier in the year, that was the one draw that Leixlip had in the league campaign. I do remember it because it stood out, I think, in everybody's mind to go up there and get such a great win and or get a great point in getting the draw. When you look at the table now, a couple of the other wins that they got to get them to 9 points probably cemented their place in Division 2 for another year. So David Conway's Chargers have done really well this year in their first year up in Division 2.
If that division was in the World Cup, it'd be the group of death.
It's a pity there are so many dead rubbers this weekend, because there's some actually cracking games there. Like, honestly, that league slipper at Tangan, like everybody's going to be talking about obviously Milltown and St. Lawrence for intermediate, but League Slip and Rathangan are 2 teams that can absolutely push for that this year. I think that'll be a cracking game.
Yeah. Well, I was impressed by both League Slip and Rathangan last year in the championship, and League Slip probably still kicking themselves over losing that on that Friday night to Milltown, wasn't it? In the championship. So that'll be interesting. Okay, so that's
Rian Tehan will be home for championship probably in Murray's Curtain, so Rathanga will be back to fairly close to full strength. So it's
there you go.
it'll be one to
That'll
watch
be
out
interesting. It certainly will. Tommy, we have the final round of fixtures in the hurling as well coming up this in the next week or so. And as you can see in Division 1, Naas are top, Maynooth, Selbridge and Leixlip in that order. Down at the bottom, you have Ardclough and Coyle Dove, Confey. And a big win for Aero Coracil against Selbridge last week. Was covering that game, and I have to say I'm very impressed by Aero Coracil. Tommy.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is where you have to try hit the ground running. Like, you know what's coming in championship. Our Oak have been, they've been right there in the senior championship for the last couple of years, and they do have, they've plenty of strength there with intercounty players. Paul Dolan, James Dolan, these lads. I mean, they have plenty of experience in there. They'll be hoping to get a win. Who are they playing on the last day? They're playing Confey. Yeah, they're playing Confey at home in the last one. So that'll be quite important, obviously, to get to try to get into that semi-final spot. But they're always exciting to watch. Every time I watch them, they're genuinely they're a good side. It was probably a little bit worrying for the rest, the beating that Naas gave Maynooth, considering Maynooth have been the closest round, and Maynooth were strong enough as well. As looking at the team sheet for the report from that match as well. And 825 boasted by Derek Irwin.
Derek Irwin playing hurling now, eh?
3 points off the bench, and he was only on for 15 minutes, I think. It's ominous, but there's obviously a bit of a battle going on down the bottom as well with Ardclough, Coyle Dove and Confey as well. So those last round matches. Ardclough and Coyle Dove still have to play. See, they've only played 5. They play each other.
Our clock match was postponed last week because of the death of the Spain's mother. So that's I think on Tuesday night. That's a back match on Tuesday night against Coyle Dove, I think. So that could change the bottom of the table. Leixlip must be happy with themselves, Seamus. They're up there in the shake-up for a semi-final spot.
Yeah, look, it's been a decent enough year for them. Like Cathal Dervin back on the panel this year. Trying to think of his name won't come to me now. Kildare half forward. Melville is there as well, and also so like they're showing a bit of strength and depth on the panel this year. Jack Travers is the guy who wouldn't come to me, but that's the one good thing about Leixlip this year. They've been able to get a little bit of a run going in the league, and that gives them a little bit of confidence going into what will be the intermediate championship this year as well. But to be up inside the top 4 and hopefully make a semi-final spot, but fairly ominous looking at Naas, as Tommy said, hitting 825, and we haven't even gotten near the start of the championship this year. But it's look at the strength and depth that they have there is just unbelievable.
So the final round of matches will be next Friday and I think Saturday in the hurling, the West Grove Hotel, Kildare Senior Hurling Leagues. Ger playing on top in Division 2, they'll be happy with that. Yeah,
I suppose you would have expected that probably.
But Wolf Tones doing well.
And Moorfield, of course, as well. Have had a kind of good couple of years as well. But Clane, they had such a fantastic year. I suppose the only thing that would have maybe prevented them was that their season went on so long last year. Into that Leinster campaign as well. So that was obviously, we've seen in the football side of things how the likes of Salons have struggled to kind of hit the ground running in the league after such a long 2025 season. So Clane have managed that well, and they've done very well there at the top. But Wolf Tones again, they continue to progress, and I think Tommy knows what he spoke about that club as well, and we've seen them in junior finals and different finals and progressing as well, and a lot of work being put in those areas as well. So that's great to see, and Moorfield as well taking over nicely there too as well. So that's positive to see. And also Kilcock as well, a very solid season there too, in as well in that top 4 as well. So credit to those sort of clubs as well that are putting in a lot of effort now in the hurling ranks as well, and we're starting to see a real good spread around the county because We often kind of, obviously a lot of the focus, certainly even from anybody outside of the county, is all on Naas, but if the county is to progress as a whole, we need, a lot of the clubs around making a big push for it. So to see a likes of Wolf Towns pushing so strongly, it's been very good to see over the last couple of years, and they're far from on their own.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have a home semi-final as well against Moorfield on Friday week. In Kill, it'll be in Kill. That's where they play most of hurling. But I know Clane beat them. Moorfield beat them kind of well enough. You imagine Moorfield, obviously, a few more players back. But imagine if Wolf Towns ended up getting out of Division 2, ended up in Division 1. That's a serious story. That's an unbelievable story. Those lads were playing 4 or 5 years ago, and they could barely get a set of jerseys together. And going into the lower leagues, going into the junior championship. It's a serious story. And if you look at from a geographic point of view, I'm not talking about low-hanging fruit now, but if you're looking at Naas, who have 1, 2, 3 teams in those leagues, and obviously, come championship as well, a couple of players might be like, geez, I'll never get a chance to give it in there with Naas. What's the closest club out to Kildare or out to Wolf Towns? Out to Salins and Kill. I mean, there's a huge future there for hurling that side of Naas, over in Salins and Kill. And it's wonderful for them to even to be battling to get into a Division 2 final. It's really, really impressive.
Absolutely, and as my recollection is, they beat Confi in a junior B maybe a couple of years ago as well in the championship. They certainly won that. So Moorfield, as you say,
sorry, Pat, couldn't cross you. No, I was going to say they won a minor hurling championship 2 years ago. Beat an amalgamation of Moorfield and Round Towers.
Okay.
In a really, really good game of hurling. And Wolf Towns, his name won't come to me now. I was looking as we were talking, full forward, that they had brilliant young lad. I said he's certainly one for the future. So agree with Tommy there. You see the likes of those coming through. I think if you take as an example, Caelan Smith coming off the Clane team from last year, young guy making the senior hurling panel, and hopefully that it's Brian Dowling that's going to be there for next year. But he'll need to be picking guys from the likes of those teams to strengthen the panel going forward as well.
Absolutely.
How old is Caelan Smith? How old would he be?
I think he's mid-20s.
I was going to say 24, 25, I think. Yeah, that's what
I thought when you said young lad, I was wondering, because I saw him up close and personal that day up and down, because we were obviously all around the sideline. He's a big boy. He's a big boy.
He's a big lad.
the down lads weren't too impressed with him throwing his weight around when he got in there. He's so strong.
Was it him who scored the winning point for playing against Leaks Up in the B Championship last year?
I think it was.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. All the memories not gone yet.
Big, powerful player. Fair play, man.
Yeah,
a big, powerful player like him. It'd be big for Clane as well. But I was just very impressed anytime I see him coming in. So we'll see.
Interesting. So that's those final round of hurling fixtures. They take place on the weekend of the 10th of July. And as Tommy has pointed out there in his graphic, the final of Division 1 is set for Saturday, the 25th of July at 4 o'clock. I presume it will be in Cedar St. Columbus Park, but we'll wait to hear. Big headline on the Kildare Nationalist on page 70, moving into 71, is what's next for the Kildare senior footballers, written by Richard Commons. Ger, can you give us a bit of a synopsis of what Richard did in that particular article?
I'd encourage, suppose, anybody who hasn't read it to read it. Obviously, I'd encourage anybody to read the Kildare Nationalist every week, but particularly this week, because Richard does really dig deep into, I suppose, how Kildare find themselves in the situation that they're in. Where to next, I suppose. He does obviously look through the years leading up to Brian Flanagan's first season in charge there, the year just gone, where we find ourselves now, and he kind of poses 6 or 7 questions that he would like to see answered, I suppose, some by the management, some by the county board. And it is, I suppose, it's a thought-provoking piece. A lot of it, I suppose, we would have discussed at different stages through the year. But Richard is obviously a very thoughtful man and thinks very in depth about Kildare GAA, and he put together some very pertinent questions, I think, there. And I would imagine that whether we get a direct answer from either Brian Flanagan or Mick Mullen or somebody like that, you certainly like to see some evidence of some of the queries that Richard put there being answered over the next, certainly in the short term or even in the longer term as well. But yeah, I definitely encourage people to read it. It's a good piece. But just one of the ones that the questions that Richard mentioned, just one that jumped out to me again with news coming in there the last week. Just it's about the injuries again. Like there's news coming through that unfortunately it appears Colm Moran has suffered a serious injury that happened in the back end of the championship season, and maybe he's going to be a doubt for the Athy championship season. The dreaded 3 letters were mentioned from what I heard. Now whether that was confirmed or not, but
we hope not. Yeah, we hope not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about seeing players developing from their debut season into the second season, and there were so many players hampered by injury this year in their second season. But even just looking at David Clifford for Kerry on Sunday, I mean, Jimmy Hyland was Kildare's David Clifford. Obviously he wasn't at that level, but come back to 2018, the same age in that under 20 championship. Jimmy Hyland was our star player, our star forward, and he's reached the age now that it's hard to see him maybe having an intercounty future. These last 3 or 4 years have been absolutely decimated with injuries. And even Paddy Woodgate was somebody there that Tommy mentioned earlier. Is somebody that you nearly forget as an intercounty player, but he's another one that suffered an ACL that kind of ended his intercounty career. Like Ben McCormick is somebody maybe whose career at the very top level seems to be fizzling out now through injuries, and it's just so frustrating. And obviously it's frustrating for us as spectators and as fans and as media looking on to see all these injuries that the players themselves must be driven demented as well, and they're the ones that are being hampered. But I mean, is the county just cursed? Are we just unlucky that we're having all these injuries, or is there something that a root and branch review of everything that goes on? Because to my mind, it's just far too much of these ACL injuries. Certainly hamstring injuries are another thing that have plagued Kildare. And you look at other counties again, and again, Kobe MacDonald is a bit of a unicorn. He's a freak. He's in the David Clifford realms. But I mean, Dara Byrne is another young lad coming through for Mayo and starting at under 19 years of age. Dara MacDonald for Louth, again, absolutely outstanding on Sunday there in the quarterfinals. I mean, these are players that Kildare have the matching of at underage level, but how can our players flourish if they're just getting dogged by these injuries? I mean, we're talking about the talent that we have at minor and under 20, but if that is a serious knee injury for Colm Moran, we've 2 joint captains there of the under 20s, and both of them could have had serious knee injuries. Obviously, thankfully Ben Ryan has come over it, and after his spell out, is showing none the worse for it. But I mean, it's still a concern to have had it at a young age and have 2 joint captains like that. And Shane Farrell is our joint captain of our All Ireland winners in 2023, and he's had 2 years out. And it's just, how do we can't progress as a county, if we keep having these injuries, and maybe it's just bad luck, and maybe there is no real reason for it, and it's just a succession of bad luck that's dogged us all the way through. But really, it's time to have a look at that, because any county is only as good as their best players. You have to get your best players on the field, and even players who were inexperienced in their first season, whether it be Colin Dalton or Ryan Sinke last year, they need that second and third season to really push on and kind of really flourish as senior county players. They all showed promise in their first season, but so many players were hampered this year, and fingers crossed that Colm Moran won't be hampered going into a second year next season. But it's just kind of, we're never going to be able to fulfill our potential if we can't get the very best out of all these players.
Yeah, well, Tommy, it can't be something lacking in Kildare-born players, because if you look at the number of Kildare players who are performing at an outstanding well for Leinster, for Munster, for Connacht, and indeed for Ulster and Ireland in rugby, all great athletic players, don't seem to have the same injury concerns that the Kildare footballers have.
No, and George right to say, to ask the question: are we just unlucky? Because you do see counties, with important players getting injured.
Well, Kerry this year had a lot of injuries.
Yeah, exactly. For me, a lot of these counties seem to get their players back kind of a lot quicker. ACL is an ACL. It can happen absolutely anybody. I mean, it's come back years in every sport, but it's those hamstring injuries that we keep coming back to. I mean, that's something I think definitely needs to be investigated, because it was a serious issue this year. And I think if you have people at the top of their game in there that are, top of their game in sports science, like, they need to sit down, and do they just sit around the table and say we were unlucky, or do they sit down and say there are certain aspects of training that we need to change, certain aspects of preparation of these players or the minding of these players that we need to change. And to be honest with you, if that question is being asked, then that would annoy me even more, because that means that was a failure on the part of the management team. That's simple as that. If it's a case that they're just unlucky and they've done everything right, and they feel that it was the conditions of each injury, were different, and how hamstrings were pulled. And I mean, I only saw maybe one person, two people maybe actually pull up with their hamstring. A lot of them I know happened in training and challenge matches. What were the conditions around them? What was it? Was a quick jerk or whatever? So it's just immensely annoying. But also, if you're staying on strength and conditioning, we're talking about the exact same thing we spoke about on the last podcast. We did a deep dive into it. But the players that are there, that aren't injured and that haven't been injured all year, they don't look up to peak fitness either, because most teams that we played against this year look fitter than us. So I mean, in every single sport, I remember when we were younger, we were always told, playing soccer, like, we're not the best team, but by God, we'll be the fittest team, because it would make it a nightmare for every team we play against, and we'll run all day. Why can't Kildare do that? So these are, again, this Richard asked those questions in the paper, and those are questions that will have to be asked at different reviews. And when you're talking about Kildare management, I mean, there are questions that they'll want to ask the strength and conditioning team as well. Brian Flanagan's going to want to know this. Damien Hendy's going to want to know this. Like, I presume these are discussions they've been having for the last 6 months with them. Lads, another hamstring. What's going on here? And they need to get the right answers, because if the answers aren't the answers they want, changes have to be made.
Another question which Richard raised in the article, which I say is in the Nationalist this week on page 70 and 71, Seamus, is with so many retirements, was there not a case to try and keep other players on the panel that had the experience, because it was a very inexperienced panel this year?
Yeah, after that Talton Cup, to lose as many as we did, and all of those being experienced players, with the under-20s coming through, you probably needed them for at least another 12 to 18 months minimum to try to bring those young lads through. And I suppose that goes back to, you look at a situation that maybe we didn't learn from. Like, Ryan Sinky was flogged Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday last year with the 20s and with the seniors, playing so much ball. And then we saw him coming in the opening round of the league against Tyrone, and we saw him coming in the last round of the championship against Kerry. So there's a young lad who probably went to the well too much over the previous 12 months, and his body broke down, for the want of a better word. And maybe, and hopefully not, to Colin Morden maybe is a little bit like that as well. But to go back to your initial point, Pat, and getting away from it, is the fact that so many experienced players, the likes of Tony Archibald, Kevin Flynn, David Hyland, we lost Aaron Masterson as well. All those guys went for one reason or another, that most of us probably don't know exactly what went on with them personally or with management. That was probably the question that maybe a lot of us need to know as well, as to why that. Like, I mean, David Hyland hasn't played a whole lot of football since because of a hip injury, and you can understand that from his own health and well-being. He had to make that decision, but certainly look at it in the context of losing so many experienced players. It certainly didn't help the cause. But from day one to the last day, have we improved enough? Has anybody been able to step up into those positions to, put their hand up and say, that's mine at centre back, or that's mine at full back? I think we still have a good bit to go to try to fill those, like, the void left by those experienced players, and it's going to take time to try and build that up again. I don't know how or where you can put your hand on it, because what we've seen over the last couple of weeks with Dublin having turned the corner, Westmeath, Louth, like 2 Leinster teams into 2 All-Ireland semi-finals, and Wicklow, absolutely, yeah. I did think I did say them, into the Halton Cup final, and lucky not to have been in it last year. But we're now scratching our head and wondering, like, where have we gone? We've slipped just down the ladder, and there's a savage amount of soul searching, questions to be answered. You talk about all those injuries. When you look at the game changed probably 2 years ago as regards it being, 11 against 11, I suppose, for the want of a better word, that the game is played at such a faster pace, and is there something there that we haven't grasped? And that's not take away from the people who are professional and experts at it. I'm only asking the questions like the rest of us, that as other supporters and people who wish Kildare well, because we all want to see Kildare getting back up that ladder as to where they deserve to be. But there's a lot of work to be done. But certainly, Pat, as you asked, the experience that went away takes time to be. I only spoke to and I didn't say that to Killian Brennan, Gooch Brennan, former Kildare great midfielder, who his own dad passed away 24 hours ago. So we wish our condolences to his mum and all his family. But I was just talking about that earlier on, that it's hard times for Kildare football, and what those guys have gone through, you'd like to see that coming back. That's the one thing that. But look, there's a lot of work to be done. I don't know where it's going to start, but the questions have to be asked. And is Brian Flanagan the man to do it or to bring it forward? He wants the job himself. He was in no uncertain terms. He said that to me the last day when I asked him. I said something like, "See you next year, Brian." And he said, "Hopefully so." But there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of soul searching, and we're back to where we were 2 years ago. We've all spoken about that and all said that. But look at the experience. Certainly doesn't help the cause. If you've those guys filling in the positions that we were missing out on this during the campaign, league and championship this year, it doesn't happen overnight.
And another thing which Richard mentioned, Ger and Seamus kind of referred to it there a little bit, was the Kildare style of play was more, I suppose, deliberate than fast paced and off the shoulder and that sort of thing, and were easy to defend against because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, looking at those quarterfinals over the weekend, you see the style of football that's being played by the top teams in the country, and or the last 8 teams, certainly in the championship. You can argue whether other clubs or other teams would be considered in the top 8, but you can't argue there that the last 8 standing, and they were all kind of very, very offensive, very quick moving, very quick through the transitions, quick through the lines. 2-pointers were hugely important in all those games. But again, looking at the kind of physique of and again, to bashing the point again about kind of the fitness as well, but to see a Louth side lose a player after 6 or 7 minutes and play that length of time in an All-Ireland quarter-final and still be looking so fit and fresh, and we saw there was an interview going around on social media there as well from Sam Mulroy. He was speaking, I think, on one of it was a Thomas Niblock's, the BBC podcast, but it was actually recorded a couple of months before Kildare beat Louth by 16 points. Was it in 2022? Yeah. And Sam Mulroy at that stage, he was talking about Louth certainly challenging for a Leinster title. I think he was asked about winning an All-Ireland title, and at that stage it would have been absolutely ludicrous to even think of Louth as a Leinster contending side. As I said, Kildare absolutely hammered them just a few months after that. But I mean, Louth obviously have a lot of good structures in place, and to see somebody like Darren McDonald coming through there, and we're fed this sort of stuff in Kildare at the moment that we have to wait for these players that they need 2 or 3 seasons at top level. Like I would go back to last year, the likes of Colin Dalton or Ryan Sinky, those young players were capable of really big things, and it's just such a shame that they've been hampered so badly in the second year here. But I mean, to see Louth, they're absolutely fantastic. The way they played there on Sunday, and we can only dream of a Kildare team playing to that sort of a level. But at the same time, that's a Louth side that we should have bet last year, 12 months ago in a Leinster semi-final, and bar a goal going either way, it could have been a win for Kildare. So it's very frustrating. I found it very frustrating watching Louth. I found it very frustrating watching Westmeath earlier in the season. On one hand, it seems we are kind of close to these teams, but on another hand, we seem a million miles off it as well. And Richard has laid out some of those questions. There's probably another 100 that you could ask as well about the general direction of where Kildare are going to go, and more importantly, the questions that we need to answer to get to where we want to go. But it doesn't take, it does take a lot, but it can be done quite quickly. We have seen Westmeath turn things around in the space of 12 months. Louth, as we said, beaten by 16 points against Kildare. Does somebody else have something up against Louth? I think it was 21. They were in Division 3 or 4, was it, and losing against Antrim and stuff like that, with a lot of the players that are playing in an All-Ireland semi-final. So things can change very, very quickly when the right things are done, but at the same time they can drag on and only get worse if the wrong things are being done. So it's a big couple of months, I think, for for Kildare GAA, and particularly when the senior football team set up.
Yeah, and Tommy, Richard, as is his wont, lays it out in a very methodical, well thought out sort of frame. And that's really what's needed now. It's not a bitching exercise, it's a real deep analysis that is required now.
But that's exactly it. That's exactly it, Pat. And the way Richard has laid it out, like he spends the first half just basically going through the year and just kind of picking out, the negatives throughout the year, some positive small ones, but building up and then going on to ask the questions. But I've just glancing through it again. Like he backs everything up. He backs up his statements. He backs up the questions that need to be asked with real stuff that's happened, be it stats or real world incidents or matches or what happened, or he's not just like you'd see on social media or something. He's not just somebody just throwing down a big rant. Everything is thought out. And I think he said he wrote this shortly after the Kerry match or something. So he was and then he was able to just put loads of thought into it over the last week. And it really is. It's just very well laid out. And they're the right questions. There's 7 there. And there's 7 questions. If you were to ask most people in Kildare to name your 7 questions that you'd want to ask the setup, they're the ones. And you've spoken with a few of them there, Pat, with the lads. And it's, if you were sitting down at a big round table in a boardroom and you were Mick Mullen and the executive and you were asking these questions, or if it was internally with Brian's management team, like these genuinely are the questions that need to be asked. Yeah. And the lads, Jared said there as well, like, I mean, it's a big couple of months. It's a big couple of months now. Yeah. I mean, the Loud lads were interviewed after the match at the weekend, and was it Darren McDonnell or someone was interviewed, and he said, he says, this is going since last October. When we met up last October, we started to really, like, I mean, that October, like, I know they're not supposed to, but obviously you can do what you have, how it has to be done. That's why July, August, September, these are big months, because once you get into the club championship, things you can get distracted a little bit because there's so many matches, and there's obviously it's all, everything is so important. But we're going to find out, I'd say, whether there is a review or something. I don't know if it'll be public, but there's just lots of Kildare fans wouldn't mind hearing about some kind of review, because I genuinely still would like to see Brian Flanagan in the role next year, and I do have confidence in him. That's exactly how I feel. But at the same time, I'd like to see something coming out and being, there's a change here, there's a change here, there's a change here, because we recognized we were lacking in these different departments. And that's it.
Ger, when I was in your role all those years ago, I was advocating all the time for a football committee similar to what was started by Colin Nolan and with the hurling committee, and the success that brought. There is now a football director of football. I think it's the correct title. Maybe it's not. Maybe head of football, perhaps. Brian Murphy is there. So is this a big role for Brian Murphy then to be part of this review process?
Yeah, certainly. I just saw. I mean, I'm not sure if director of football is his exact title, is it? But that is kind of the
head of football. I think.
Yeah. So like he'd certainly imagine that he would have to be involved in that, because I suppose like there's 2 strands to it. On one hand, I suppose Brian, particularly in that role, will be looking for the long-term development of Kildare GAA, but again, we can't get caught up in always looking to the future. 12 months time, Kildare, 6 months time, Kildare will be preparing for the National League again. I mean, we need to see something that has immediate benefits, very, very short-term benefits. As Tommy says, work behind the scenes. I'm sure already, I've no doubt, certainly one thing you cannot accuse Brian Flanagan or his management team of is not doing hard work. And I'm sure already plans are in place for pre-season and through the club championship and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, that has to be done and done right, because, Kildare can make progress before the start of next season in 2027. So that is definitely one aspect to it. But I think Brian's maybe role will be more, how do we, maybe looking at that minor squad, like how do we get the best of them in 5 years' time? Like I think, so there's definitely just 2 parts to that role, I would say. One long-term, but as I said, I mean, there's things that need to be done very short-term, because the worrying thing is, that we saw with the support, the lack of interest, within Kildare supporters of a team that wasn't going well, or or a team that the Kildare supporters obviously didn't feel were playing to their potential. I mean, that has a huge knock-on effect, and if that drags on for another couple of years, I mean, God forbid Kildare didn't get out of Division 3 next year, and then you're 2 years in a row in Division 3, a couple of years again in Taunton Cup, and you're a few years then from having an occasion like having a Kerry come to Newbridge. I mean, that all has knock-on effect then as well, with budgets and money coming into the coffers and all that sort of stuff. And once you're on that kind of debt spiral, it's very hard to get out of. So I mean, bouncing back very quickly is very, very important for Kildare, I think, as well. So yeah, definitely there's two aspects to that. I mean, Brian Murphy, I'm sure, is looking at schools football where Kildare, have done very, very well again, and a lot of players have been developed to a high standard. But the big thing then is, how do we push on and turn them into senior players of a very highable and competitive standard as well?
Yeah. Well, I've heard Brian speak on a number of occasions, and he's certainly very articulate, and he's really enthusiastic. And we know what he has done for Kildare at underage level, whether it be minor or under 21. But he has pointed out, look, this is not today or yesterday. This is 100 years of disappointment for Kildare. So what's going wrong? That has to be looked at. And is it the entirety? Is it the right championship we have, the right leagues with lots and lots and lots of matches? But are they the right type of matches? Are the quality matches to bring forward inter-county players? Those sort of things surely have to be looked at, Tommy.
Yep. That's exactly it. I mean, it has to be. You do want to see some kind of movement somewhere as regards kind of bringing this, pushing onto it like a style of football. I was just thinking there, Pat, just as you were talking, and there's so much talk, and we're always talking about this, this strategy and the strategy to get the best out of Kildare football for years. And when we spoke in the podcast last time as well, I said the same thing. I genuinely think one of the most important things the Kildare management need to do during this club championship is to find a small cohort of players that are 24, 25, 26, God forbid 27. Players that are strength and condition wise, they're far along, whether it's been with their clubs or whether they're ex-county players or whatever, and have experience, and find them in the club championship, and you bring them in to complement the youth. I'm not going to go full Alan Hansen here now and say you can't win anything with kids, but like you genuinely need a complement. You need those experienced players. The players that stepped away, they all stepped away for different reasons. There weren't many of them dropped. They just wanted they wanted a break. Some of them were young men, but they were involved with the county scene for years. Some of them just had no interest. Some of them were injured. Some of them were retired. But I think we need to find them. I think they're there. I genuinely think they're in the county. We're going to be on this podcast throughout the club championship. We'll be identifying players. It's not. I don't know if the Kildare management listen to this. It's not our jobs. They're going to have databases on these players. They'll know everything about these players. But we're going to have discussions on this podcast, and we're going to identify players just like we did last year when we were talking about the teams of the week, and we spoke about each individual player and what we thought they brought. Like I spoke with Conor Harris a lot. I genuinely thought he looked like an inter-county player. Then of course he went and got injured. he's only coming back now. So again, that's the Kildare thing. But I just think, Pat, that's a very important thing that needs to be done. The youth is great, and it is going to be great. There's great under 20 players coming through, but Jar said it as well. The next 6 months, the next 12 months are important for Kildare as well, and we need rapidly to start thinking about next year, as opposed to constantly bringing through young lads.
Sorry, Pat, just one thing, just to jump in, just on a slight tangent, but just something you mentioned there, just about championship structures as well. I mean, that is something that I think we've all beaten that drum as well. But obviously there was a vote last year with the clubs, and as far as I know, I don't think it can actually be voted on again. Is it for 3 years? So it'll be another couple of years before it can be voted on. Obviously, there's a tweak this year's championship, but there was a vote to have a much a bigger structural change to the championship. But I mean, is that something that the county board or the Brian Murphy need to take out of the hands of the clubs? Because clubs are very unlikely to vote for less senior teams, or even teams maybe in the middle ground of the intermediate. They're not going to vote for less teams in the intermediate, and they're not going to that. So if it is something that the county board decided or felt very strongly about, that senior championship should be reduced from 16 to 12 to 10 or whatever, that is not something that they should force through, rather than relying on the clubs to vote for it, because ultimately clubs will always try and vote and they want to remain senior or intermediate or whatever the case may be. Turkeys don't vote for Christmas, so does it need somebody with a kind of an overview of what's best for Kildare GAA to come in and make a strong move there?
It has to, because Kildare GA is tasked with looking after GA matters in Kildare. That's the Division 5 and Division 7 as well as the elite divisions. So, but you have to have, I suppose, a bias towards the elite division so that you can develop your inter-county players accordingly. But so there's a balance there to be struck. To I suppose social football as against the more elite sort of football is what we're talking about at county level. But to develop the elite player, you must have the proper structures in place to challenge them to become better footballers, because you will not do it on a training ground from November to January, and then with all the matches that are coming up, they don't get a chance to I suppose put anything in place between January and June, because matches are one weekend after the other. That's my point anyway. Seamus, another one that was mentioned by Richard was a lack of confidence in Kildare, and this is not something that has happened overnight. Whether there've been some severe beatings in Croke Park against Kerry and Dublin and all of that. So, is there a lack of confidence in Kildare players when they get to senior level?
Well, I don't know whether it's when you get to senior level, but I think it's a case of your confidence becomes shattered when you're not winning. And I think if you look at Ger Brennan a couple of weeks ago when Dublin played Louth in the round 1 or round 2, whatever it was, and there was nobody in Croke Park, and when the draw was come out, he looked for Parnell Park. But I suppose you flip that over, you wouldn't swing a cat on the hill last Sunday. So confidence is a thing that feeds through from maybe supporters into the team. Yeah. Teams going well, you get a run of people, and the Dubs were just a typical example of that. They've proved it. You look at Westmeath this year and Louth with the support they've had. So, but certainly, confidence is a problem when things are not going right on the field. You have to feel sorry for those players, management and everybody included, traipsing off day after day, week after week, and not getting the wins maybe that you want or deserve. And then the confidence becomes an all-time low. They're only humans at the end of the day. Any of those lads that play with Kildare, they're the nicest lads you could meet, and we all know that. But at the end of the day, when things are not going right for you, the first thing that'll drop is your confidence, and you're nearly probably dreading the following Sunday coming down the road. But just to go back to maybe one little point that I've discussed this with somebody else recently, and it was one of Miko's things when he came to Kildare first. Like we talk week in, week out, and we say, look, there's a lad, how come he's not on the panel, or how come he's not on the team, or maybe he should be on it. And the question there maybe is, are there some guys who maybe should be but don't want to be? Has their level of commitment maybe finished or has gone, or they don't want to make that commitment to come through to the panel?
It's a tough commitment.
It's a tough commitment, absolutely. And so that suppose beggars the question that when Miko came first, it didn't matter who you are or what you were, whether you were Rainbow or Johnny McDonald or whoever. When he brought in 80 guys, anyone that wanted to come in was welcome to come in for those trials. So you knew that you had guys, number one, who wanted to play with Kildare, and number two, to pick the panel from it. And it was Miko's way or no way. But I just don't know, because we spend so much time, all us and supporters, asking and wondering how come such a lad's not on the panel, how come he's not there. We're not getting those answers either. You know what I mean? And it all culminates in the one thing: it's the good of Kildare football, and it's only just something in my own head you'd wonder: is something like trials worth looking at again? Andy was on about it in Kilkenny.
Oh, he was indeed, and he's a straight talker. We mentioned earlier on about the role that Brian Murphy might have at Ger, but the county board, and I mean the club representatives who are the county board, not just the executive, they have a big role now as well. I mean, they have to ask the right questions. They have to challenge the executive and all of that, but not as a bitching exercise, but as quality questioning, like Richard has done there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, we spoke about the county board meeting, was at the start of June there, when obviously it was Brendan Earney from Kilcock and John Flood, I think, from Rathcoffey. They were the two most widely quoted delegates from that meeting. Brian Flanagan made his point of view that it wasn't the ideal timing, and look, that's probably Brian Flanagan. I think probably has a point there as well. To be fair, although we have said the delegates, they don't get too many opportunities to put those questions to to the management committee.
Should there be a special county board meeting then? Should there be a special county board meeting?
Well, look,
July?
back in the day, there was county board meetings every month. It's only in the last kind of 10 years or so, or even a little bit less, maybe, that they've become
5 years.
more frequent.
5
yeah,
years.
Maybe since COVID, is it? Perhaps, yeah. Maybe COVID was the break of it. But yeah, look, there was county board meetings across the summer months, and I went to at one stage in my life, I was going to every one of them, and summer meetings weren't always the most attended ones. Obviously, a lot of people on holidays and different things like that, but it still gave people an opportunity to ask questions. So look, I think that's an absolute vital thing. There's nothing worse than going to a county board meeting and it being over in 45 minutes, or even a Congress at the end of the year, convention at the end of the year, being over in an hour and a half. I mean, there's nothing worse than apathy in a county. I mean, there should be awkward questions asked. And look, Mick Mullen is well able to answer questions, and you might not always agree with the answers you get, but Mick Mullen will answer questions all day long, so he won't have any problems or issues, I think, with questions being posed. And it's always good, I think, for the county to have those questions thrown out in the open, as long as it's done in a very respectful manner. And of course, I think that's where the likes of Brendan and John Flood were coming from the last time. They asked questions, intelligent questions, and reflected what people were feeling around the county. I mean, not every supporter who's on the terrace gets the chance to sit into a county board meeting, but I'm sure Brendan Nurney, I always said this as well, the delegates aren't speaking for themselves. I'm sure Brendan Nurney has spoken to people within his club as well before that, and that's the feeling of his club. That's the idea of those county board meetings, that delegates are representatives from that club. So I mean, if Tommy has a problem in Castledermot or Seamus has a problem in Suncroft, they go and speak to the delegates. The delegates go and bring these matters to the county board at the county board meetings. I mean, that's the whole idea of them. It shouldn't be just a delegate going on their own, off their own back, and asking their own questions and getting an answer there and going on. I mean, Brendan again should have brought whatever answer was got from Mick Mullen back to his own club, and that should be discussed further and see if they want to raise the matter again at the next county board meeting. But yeah, those questions need to be asked, they need to be raised, and again, I think that's always good. Healthy debate is good, and getting those things out in the open is a good thing. And then you can judge a county chairman as well, whether you like the answers or not that comes from the top table. I mean, that's you have to have strong opinions when you're at the top table as well, and then people either keep voting in every year to keep you in the positions or not.
That's it. Well, that was going to be my next point, Tommy. Do the clubs have to start asking questions of themselves? Because the clubs are not going to, a lot of the clubs are not, or not the people within the clubs are not going to support the clubs at their matches. I mean, you have been at club matches recently, small number of people at them. Obviously, they're not going to the county games either, whether it be underage. So do the clubs start after asking, what's going wrong? Why are we losing people? Why are people not attending our own games or supporting our own games? And then obviously why they're not supporting the county? So the clubs have to ask questions as well.
They do. I've been to a good few league matches this year, and the crowds have been all right. Actually, I was over at Garvan against Robertstown, and there was a big crowd there up on the bank. I think clubs are trying to push their own matches, and they're trying to push their the reserve league matches, and trying to come on down, and we have a coffee shop here, and so they are trying at that level. Now, could they do more? Every club could do more, absolutely, and you could try. I always maintain that every club should try encourage the younger people, the families, the parents, to bring their younger kids to Kildare matches. I genuinely do. I was reminded, somebody told me, I actually read it on the forum a couple of days ago, and it reminded me that somebody had told me something similar, that there was underage club training fixed across the county the night that the Kildare Miners were in the Leinster final, and the night they were in the All-Ireland semi-final, the Friday nights. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, especially the Leinster final in Parnell Park, the under 20 final in Parnell Park, and the minor final over in Portlaoise. That word has to go across the board. It's like, geez, lads, don't have your under 12s trained tonight, or your under 10s. Try bring them to Portlaoise instead, because Louth do that. Louth bring Offaly do that for the hurling as well. You saw the crowd that they brought. But getting back as well, I do agree with you, and the clubs need to have their voices, as the lad said. Just one last kind of point from me on it. I'm talking as a Kildare fan. strictly as a Kildare fan, that I think that Club Kildare should have a representative in the county board meetings with a voice. I think it should have an official, because we know there are people in the administrative part of Club Kildare that are also on the executive, and there's that crossover. But I think
Colin Farrell is there.
Colin is there. Alan Dunny is involved in the setup as well,
Yeah.
and a couple of others. But like me as a fan, for example, if I wanted, maybe if I could contact somebody and say, when you have your little speaking piece at the county board meeting that's on in September, would you mind asking these questions or this question, or pick them out, or just, this is my opinion. And then I'd like to know that there is a representative of the supporters, an actual representative of supporters, not somebody now that's on, like Colin and Alan, brilliant, like I always have been for years in greater roles. But I would like to see somebody that's genuinely taking the questions off the fans, and then is at the county board meeting. So I, as a fan, am confident that that's my representative in there. I just think that would be quite important, because the clubs are represented, yes. But I mean, like, I'm not a member of Castlereagh GA. You know, I'm not a member of Kilcullen GA. I go support Castle. So there are a lot of Kildare fans that are not directly associated with their club. Maybe their kids are older and they're not involved with clubs anymore. Those people feel like they have no voice at all. And that's why people end up fighting on social media and fighting on forums, because they have no outlet and they have nobody to talk to, and they have nobody to give their feelings, because they feel like they're just talking to the wall. So I just feel like there should be a Club Kildare supporters representative, somebody that's experienced, that's been in there before in those roles, but at the same time will open a forum for fans.
And Seamus, and I don't mean this as a gimmick or anything like that, should there be, I suppose, incentives from the county board to get people to come to games, or the sponsors to get people to come to games, as well? Just putting something, the fixture out, there has to be something more to attract people to go to the game.
Yeah, we have seen it, I suppose, Pat, in the past, trying to get children there for coming with your jersey. Maybe that was more on the hurling end of things. And sometimes
it was the hurling, Seamus. It was the hurling. And it was only the hurling. And that doesn't wash anymore, because the hurling needed the crowds. And they were obviously getting smaller crowds for obvious reasons. But that doesn't wash. Now we're not getting supporters for the football. But there was nothing done like that for the footballers.
No, absolutely. No, I agree 100%. But it's I don't know what you'd put your hand on to try and entice people to come through the gate. Again, it's a confidence thing. It's a success thing. Like, I think you'll agree that, like, what we saw crowd-wise for the minors and the under-20s this year was the type of support you'd be hoping for from Kildare, and that would carry through to the senior team. But it's not happening. Do you know what I mean? It's the same faces that you'll see. Loads of parents there, which was really lovely to see for minors and 20s. And you won't forget the crowd was on the pitch in Portlaoise, or even the last day up in Tyrone, even though Kildare had lost in their 20s. But to see the support that was there, it's brilliant. Like, how do you get them back? How do you get them out? And it's back to your initial question, Pat, confidence and success. But there has to be some sort of an incentive to bring you along the way, whatever it might be. I don't know. And I go back to one point that you made earlier, Pat, was talking about, and it probably all leads into having a county board meeting with chairmen and secretaries, because Brendan is chairman of Kilcock, and the questions that he asked were, so relevant and so good coming from a chairman. Like, clubs need to maybe pull in their members, ask what are their questions, club members' questions, what do you want or what do you need to see, and bring them through the chairman, the secretaries, to a county board meeting. God knows what little nuggets you might find.
I know Mick Mullen has regular meetings with the chairs and secretaries of clubs, in fairness to him. But maybe not on a he has indeed. Yes.
But that's an important thing you said, Pat, because I mean, people always think, or have this idea that the top table or the county board are this separate entity altogether. I mean, Mick Mullen came through the Selbridge club. Mick Brown before him was a staunch St. Lawrence's man as a player, all the way through to an administrator. I mean, they're club men as well, and they are people who want to see Kildare GA progressing, and it's not a case of them and us, or two people pitted together. I mean, it should be that the county will only progress when everybody is kind of on the one page and they're pulling in the one direction. And I mean, it's very, very difficult for clubs, because I mean, you're going into the peak season now. I mean, clubs, just to keep the doors going themselves or open themselves, it's very hard, and a lot of them are obviously focused on their own championships or whatever it may be coming up as well. So I mean, there's a lot going on in clubs, and it can be very, very difficult to have the time from people who are only volunteers at the end of the day and have their own personal lives as well to look after too. So it's a lot, but I mean, that's what successful counties are doing, and you know, we just have to find a way of harnessing everything that's good in the county, and you know, focus and get everyone, as I said, on the same page, and you know, just get Kildare GA going, because there's so much done right in the county, but at the same stage, you know, same stage, you know, there's so much that needs to be improved upon. Yeah, it's a matter of getting those heads together and getting those knowledgeable people in the same room and getting them pulling in the one direction.
Final point for you, Tommy.
What?
A final point from you. That's a question, all right. What? That's a good question.
I thought you were going to ask me a question.
No.
That was my final point. Like we've in fairness, we have covered a lot of it.
Yeah.
For me, it's communication, it's action. It's us not guessing in here, because there's nothing worse you can do than just guess what's going on behind the scenes and hope that this happens and hope that happens. Bit of communication. Maybe have an old county board meeting brought forward a month earlier or something like that. You know, there's lots of things that I'd like to hear about in there, because it's difficult time for everybody. It's you know, there's pressure on Brian Flanagan and his management team. There's pressure on the county board. There's pressure on the managers of all the other Kildare teams to suddenly start producing players. There's pressure on clubs. So, you know, you don't want that to fester, that negativity either. Like, you know, so let's hope now next couple of months we can just kind of shake off this little bit and look forward to next year. But one final thing before we go, Pat, we should mention as well, just talking about the future, is just congratulations to Jimmy Lynch for getting the Leinster Player of the Year, and both himself and Ben making the Team of the Year. So fair play to them, because they're two lads that we nearly nailed on to see on the senior team.
Yeah, Seamus, final word from you before we wrap up.
Yeah, you'd like to see more togetherness, more, I suppose, what's the word I was looking for? More togetherness, but more transparency between the county board, the management team, and the supporters. You know, that we can maybe all work together for the one cause. But I'd certainly be much connection. I'd be certainly in favour of going down the road of trial matches to see who we have or who's interested. And if you only pick up 2 or 3 players, because club championships are there, but sometimes you don't get maybe who you want. You know, it's sort of a way. It can be a high pressured situation for a lot of guys. But yeah, look at. It's all for the good of it. We're lucky we can express our opinions here, Pat, on this, and it's in no way trying to be, you know, hard or coming down hard on management or players or anybody like that. You know, we're just fulfilling a situation to try and express our opinions. But look, we saw with minors, we saw with 20s what success brings in Kildare. We saw it in the past when Miko was here in '98 and 2000. If you could bring those days back, you'd love to be allowed, or a Westmeath or a Wicklow man this year, or even the way they're going at the moment. So, yeah, hopefully those days can come back.
Well, Ger, we've been on air for almost 2 hours now. So, as sports editor of the Kildare Nationalist, we'll let you wrap it up.
Yeah, no, just from a playing point of view, you'd love to see a kind of a change in mindset. And, you know, Seamus mentioned confidence there. Like, the players hate losing, but at the same time, it just feels like everybody's become almost accustomed to it. And as well, you know, the time will come shortly enough after the Cup Championships when the preparations will begin in earnest. And, like, you know, you just want Kildare to be looking at those Louth players, looking at those Westmeath players. And, like, for a long time, we lived under the cloud of Dublin here in Leinster, you know, and we thought nothing was really possible because Dublin were so all-powerful, and, you know, we were never going to match Dublin. But now Louth, Westmeath has shown what it's capable of, and there's absolutely no reason in the world why Kildare couldn't match in the next couple of years what Louth and Westmeath have done this year. So, yeah, just hopefully they'll just manage to just click, and everything will fall into place someday before we all leave the earth.
Yeah, well, as we said, Richard's article in this week's Kildare Nationalist, What's Next for Kildare Senior Footballers, covered on page 70 and 71. Absolutely genuine, absolutely methodical, absolutely analytical, and as a real Kildare supporter, and the 4 of us would be in the same bracket, and anything we've said tonight was, in our opinion, to be in the interest of Kildare football at club level, at inter-county level, and we're all supporters, so that's our Shortgrass podcast for this particular episode. And as the supporter column in the Kildare National used to say, Kildare Boo.